is one of William Shakespeare's most famous plays. It's gloomy, it's bloody, and it comes from a later, darker period of the bard's life, but it drips with some of the best writing to grace the English language. Shake off your downy sleep and listen to this tale told by two idiots whose virtues will plead like angels. We'll strut and fret for 90 minutes while sipping single malt Highland Scotch from the very heats of Dunsinane. Come destroy your ears with this new Gorgon. Let us physic your pain with episode 6 of Toasting the Classics, MacBeth.
What are we talking about today?
We are talking about that Scottish play.
Are we going to say it?
Well, why not? We're not. This isn't a theater. We're not doing a play.
We don't have to worry about being injured. Well, we are performing in a way, so, but we're not performing the play, so I think we can say it.
Right.
I think we can say that we're doing MacBeth today.
MacBeth by Billy
Shake.
Shake. That's right.
Yep.
All right. So that's our classic for today. Is William Shakespeare's Macbeth.
Free choice this week.
It was. Can you tell whose choice it was? McArthur.
My choice. Yep.
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, it's kind of a dirty secret is that this podcast is not entirely to entertain people. It's also so that I can get educated. I just missed this.
It's just basically about what
never read this play.
You want it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just never read this play. Never saw it. Anything.
Why did you pick it?
Because it seemed like a gap. Seemed like a big gap in my knowledge. Also, the drink's pretty easy to pick.
Yeah, well, that's true.
When you're talking about Scotland, although
definitely 40 ounces.
Yes, malt liquor 40
Absolutely.
ounces.
It has nothing to do with your last name.
No, not really.
Yeah,
not really. Although I like that region. That region it's a cool part of the world.
I thought that's why you're saying it because MacArthur, Macbeth.
MacArthur, Macbeth.
Yeah, a little bit of the Scottish history.
Got to be pretty much the same region. I actually had a little difficulty because I was trying to match the region, and it was sort of
with your selection, your drink selection.
My drink selection matched with where Macbeth takes place, and I didn't get much in the way of. There wasn't like a firm answer about exactly where.
It was kind of all over the place. The history, the real history, and this is something that I didn't know, and I guess I'm just jumping ahead to that. I didn't realize how that it actually was kind of based on, loosely based on history.
Right. There were two kings. Or rather, I guess there's three king characters because there's Duncan, there's Macbeth, and then Malcolm, Duncan's son. So they're all real people. But
Banquo,
he was real. Right. That's right because he ended up being. That's the reference to his children becoming kings.
Right.
Is James I or James VI of Scotland, supposedly descended from Banquo.
Right.
Who I don't even know if he's a real person, but there was a bunch of. Disputes about that.
Right.
Yeah, so they're real kings, but in reality, Macbeth defeated Duncan in battle,
right?
Didn't murder him, and was a king for a long time, a fairly successful king for.
Yeah, he actually ruled for 10 years.
10 years or so, something like that.
Ruled for a full decade.
Pretty big difference. I'm not even sure. I think the choice to do this play for Shakespeare and to change it from what was in the history in that way had to do with trying to impress the new king, James I.
Right.
Because of the Banquo connection and stuff like that. So that's why this got changed into a story that didn't really happen.
Right.
About murder of a king, which you would think would be a problem.
Yeah.
If you're writing, basically you're living in a dictatorship when you have a king like that. So, you can get in trouble by having a play. But what happens to Macbeth is all bad. So it's certainly not in favor of killing the king.
Right.
So.
Well, or those are the consequences of killing the king. Right. You end up in all the turmoil that Macbeth was under. Right. Which is to say quite a lot.
Which version did you end up watching?
I read it.
Okay.
And then I watched the same version that you actually sent out. So you can find this on YouTube if you enter Macbeth. There's a great version. Stars Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen.
It must have been. I didn't see what it was produced. It had to have been early '80s or something like that.
I think 1979 is what I remember.
Royal Shakespeare.
I think so.
And what's amazing is you see this whole cast of characters like Judi Dench.
Judi Dench is Lady Macbeth. Yeah.
Dame Judi Dench now.
Yeah, Dame Judi Dench, Sir Ian McKellen.
Ian McKellen,
both ended up being knighted. The two. I guess they're the main characters.
Yeah, they're the main characters, but throughout it,
arguably. Macduff could be a bigger character than Lady Macbeth, but
Macduff.
Macduff is the one who is played by the actor in Jurassic Park.
That's who it is.
That says clever girl.
Yeah, clever girl. Yeah, he's a South African hunter. Yeah, in Jurassic Park. I was like, who the hell is that guy?
Yeah, that was really, when I saw him, I just kept, every time he walked on screen, I'm like, clever girl.
I'm glad I didn't figure it out until now. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you notice who was the character? He played multiple characters, but his main character was
the Emperor. You're going to talk about the Emperor.
Yeah, I'm talking about the Emperor. Yeah, but that guy. Who did he play? Ross. Ross was just does a lot of exposition, explaining what's going on.
Well, he was one of the men. I mean, he would run back and forth, deliver messages and so forth. But he was also the guy that answered the door.
The porter.
The porter.
The porter. He gives a big speech, doesn't he? The porter. I can't remember. Do you remember what that speech was like? Because I kind of dropped the ball on that.
Well, it's called equivocation. It's this whole thing tied into the gunpowder plot. About equivocation and the Jesuits. It's this really weird kind of moment in English history that pits the Jesuits against the king and against...
Yeah, I mean, the king was, I guess, kind of suspected of being sort of a closet Catholic, or was he just openly Catholic, James I? I can't remember which.
No, he was Protestant. His father was Catholic. And that was the thing, is would they accept the son of a Catholic king, right?
I think I'm thinking of Charles. Charles, I think everybody suspected of possibly
one. James I turned out to be Protestant. So, but no, it was something about the whole the gunpowder plot. And if you've ever seen V for Vendetta, you know all about that.
That's the mask. The Guy Fawkes mask.
The Guy Fawkes, right?
Vendetta, yeah.
And but there was a whole episode. I mean, all we know of really is Guy Fawkes here in this country because we're idiots. And actually, I shouldn't say that. Britain's small, so we don't care about him. But in any case,
you almost managed to not offend, and now you offended Americans and British.
No, I backed off on the Americans.
I think everybody got their noses dirty there.
But no, all we really know about is Guy Fawkes because of that movie, and frankly, if it weren't for that movie, most people wouldn't have heard of him.
I lived in England for several months one time in the fall, and I was there for Guy Fawkes Day.
Yeah.
And it was just fireworks, and it took me a day or two to figure out what was going on. Where were there fireworks?
So it is a big event.
Yeah, it's
they have fireworks there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, crazy.
You wouldn't think so. No, we heard them all night. I mean, I was out in Oxford. I wasn't in London. I don't know if they let you shoot off fireworks in London, but
they don't let you do a lot of things in London.
I wouldn't think so. No,
but
I wouldn't think so.
But yeah, so there were. There were a multitude of co-conspirators, and
there's another famous name, and I don't remember what it is. It's Guy Fawkes and this other guy, pretty much were the two.
It's like Garrett or Garnett or something like that.
But, I can't remember.
I don't know. Somehow the Jesuits play in there, and there's this whole thing about equivocation, which is saying one thing meaning another, or
it's like
saying
a
two
way
things
of not cursing yourself by lying, while also not revealing yourself to be a Catholic, essentially.
So I guess the Jesuits specifically believed in equivocation for, when it's in the duty of God or something like that, when it's for God.
Right.
And I guess they believed they were doing, this was this is something to be done for gods. In any case, I think supposedly that's what the porter is. And there's all these little clues in there because they don't know exactly when it was written. Early 1600s for sure, but
definitely after 1603 because that's when Elizabeth died.
Right.
So we know, and I think Shakespeare didn't live terribly much longer. Yeah. So they're not sure exactly when it was done, and there's some dispute about. There's another guy who wrote a lot of the lines.
No, there was dispute, but I think that's been pretty much proven unfounded. I mean, they do attribute it all to Shakespeare. There's a lot. I mean, who knows, man? It was. It was so long ago. That's why Shakespearean study, is still a thing.
Oh yeah.
And we have, matter of fact, in my department, we have a brilliant Shakespearean theorist from, I think she got her DPH or Doctor of Philosophy from Oxford in Shakespearean studies specifically.
Nice.
So
very cool.
It's still, a very, very big field. And kind of one of the mainstays of any English department or literature department. So, and it's because there's all these, things they don't know about, exactly. Yeah. I was reading that the folio that this one first appears in, I think in like 1623 or something like that.
Okay.
They're not sure if this is the full play because it's much shorter than any of his other plays.
Is it?
Yeah, it's just barely over half as long as Hamlet, I believe. as an example. But see, a lot of his plays were shortened when they were published in these folios, right? Mm-hmm. They'd give you kind of a synopsis, like an abridged version, and then the full version. And this is the only one that exists. And all of the other ones, there's a synopsis or an abridged version of like Hamlet, and then the full version of Hamlet. And this is one of the only ones that it just has this one short piece. So they're thinking it's about half as long still is missing. Like there's a full version of it out there that's quite a bit longer.
I mean, for my money, it works as it is. I don't really feel like I wasn't like, boy, I wish this was going to be a lot longer. Like I need some more guys standing around in rooms talking about it. Although, Lady Macbeth dies off screen.
She dies off screen,
and we don't even know.
She doesn't
in what way.
Right.
That's weird.
Well, she has a few, very brief parts, and that's the thing that they talk about in comparison to a lot of his other plays. The only multidimensional character is Macbeth. Really. Everybody else is very flat, very two-dimensional. They don't have a lot going on. They don't say a lot. They don't do a lot. Even Lady Macbeth, who is the other most interesting person in the play, doesn't do a lot, doesn't say a lot. At first she does, right? She's a co-conspirator, and she eggs him into it.
Yeah, she definitely... Yeah.
But then you kind of lose her. You don't see her again until she goes crazy.
Yeah, if there's a missing scene, I think it probably is her death.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that
could be
a
lot.
It seems like a notable thing because she's pretty fleshed out. I mean, she's having her own crisis about having killed Duncan, and she assists in the plot. She gets him to do it. So she's a pretty important character.
Right.
You get a little bit of Macduff when his family is killed.
Right.
That's a pretty good scene.
That was a cool scene.
I thought
And my children too?
Yeah.
I just told you. Yes, her children.
And how many of my children?
And how many of my children?
Yeah. He's really like...
And my wife. How is she? Yeah. It's like, wow. I mean, that was a really cool part.
Yeah, that's a
very
good
powerful
bit.
part.
That is a good bit. Yeah, they really played that realistically for what somebody, the kind of things you would say, So
the trauma that you'd go through.
Because I sort of thought when that scene started, he was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, my family's dead.
Right.
And I was like, well, that's weird, I guess. But then they drew it out.
He did, but he's like in shock, basically.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty effective, actually.
But yeah, for the most part, there's not a lot about any of the others. We don't know that much about him. The whole thing with Malcolm was weird. About he's
talking about he's too much of a lecher to be king.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. That was weird.
His appetite for women was just too much. Yeah. He could never make it as king. And then Macduff's reply is like, "Don't worry, there's enough women. There's plenty of women in Scotland.
Yeah.
Tamper your cravings or whatever it was." And he's
that's
like,
not going to be a problem.
Yeah, he's like, "No, trust me, there's not."
Yeah.
But then he turns out, I've never actually known a woman before. So I don't know.
Right. It's all a big trick.
Yeah. What was that?
I don't know. Very weird scene. I guess he's trying to test out Macduff,
right?
To see whether he wants him to help him out, because essentially he needs Macduff to go and kill the guy.
Right. Well, it also makes you wonder, what was Macduff thinking? I mean, what else could happen, other than your wife and kids get slaughtered once you split? So just for if you haven't read it or watched it, Macduff actually.
Should we do a little synopsis for people, just sort of tell them?
I think you should do that, yeah.
Okay, all right. I mean, basically, the story starts out with a king named Duncan, who's a respected, sort of like one of these like holy type kings. Everybody loves him. He's a great king. And they win a battle against the Norwegians and the Irish. Macbeth does. So he's becoming sort of a successful war leader for Duncan. And then his wife, the king comes to stay with them. The wife, Lady Macbeth, gets the idea to kill him so that he can become king. And then he becomes he does that, becomes king, becomes sort of a dictator, starts going kind of crazy with the guilt of having killed the king, and just ends up like murdering all these people all around him. And there's a counter-revolution, basically.
Right.
Macduff's men come, 10,000 men come, they have a battle at the end, and Macbeth is killed, and Malcolm becomes the king. Malcolm is Duncan's son. So that's essentially the story.
Right.
I didn't mention in my synopsis now probably one of the most famous parts, which is the Weird Sisters. They give him a prophecy at the beginning, telling him that he's going to be the Thane of Cawdor. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so.
And then also eventually be the king. And then he's immediately becomes Thane of Cawdor because I can't remember what happened. Somebody died.
No, the original Thane was a traitor.
Okay.
So they
that's right.
They killed him, and Duncan killed him and made Macbeth, the honorable Macbeth, the Thane, because he fought so well.
Right, which makes sense. You seem to be in line for a promotion after beating those Norwegians.
Right.
God knows it's tough to beat the Norwegians. So. Although in this time, this would have been in the Viking Age. This would have taken place just before 1000 AD, I think.
Okay.
These kings. So this is a pretty active time for the Norse. I mean, they definitely would have been a big problem for a Scottish king.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, that's essentially the story. The weird sisters give him this prophecy and tell him that he's going to be king, but don't think there's any equivocation in the first prophecy. That one's pretty straightforward. They say you'll be Thane of Cawdor, you'll be king, and Banquo here, his sons, his progeny will become kings of Scotland. Then later he goes back to clarify with them, and that's when he gets the equivocating prophecy, which I think it ties into that theme of equivocation, the Catholic version of equivocation, because they give him one of these famous oracles that kind of, I always think they end up sounding like BS, honestly. Like, you can't be killed by someone not born of, you can only be killed by someone not born of a woman.
Right. Which he says, well, and automatically he thinks, well, that's impossible.
And the catch is he had a cesarean section, so he wasn't born of. That doesn't make you not born of woman.
Now, did the same thing happen in Caesar? Wasn't Brutus? Isn't the same thing? Didn't Caesar die because the same prophecy?
There's a prophet. I know there's a prophet. There's a soothsayer.
He couldn't be killed by anybody born a woman, and Brutus was.
I don't think so. I don't remember that. It has been 30 years since I read Julius Caesar. I read it in high school. I did actually like that one.
I think there is a connection. Well. I mean, it is a C-section. It's called cesarean section for a reason, I think. And I think it's something with Julius Caesar.
Could be.
But
it's spelled strange. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to look that up right now. It's tempting, but I'm not going to do that. I did look up William Shakespeare died in 1617, by the way.
Oh, there you go.
So he did not live much longer after this play. This is sort of his
perhaps
later, darker period.
14
Like I think that's one of the things I noticed in this is I think this is a mature person writing these plays in a way that some of the earlier stuff isn't. Like you read Romeo and Juliet, the people sort of behave like farce. This one, Macduff getting the news about his family, like we said, plays out. It actually shows how someone would behave in such a traumatic situation, and when the guilt of killing the king for both Lady Macbeth and Macbeth himself, again, is like almost like PTSD or something is the way they're acting. Especially Ian McKellen was really like chewing the scenery in some of these bits. What was the part where he really loses it? They're at when Banquo's ghost shows up.
He's at the dinner.
At the banquet. Yeah. And he's like frothing at the mouth, literally frothing at the mouth.
Spittle everywhere.
I was having a little trouble with that part of the performance. I was like, can we tone this down a little bit? Like, this is a bit much. But so how do you do with understanding Shakespeare?
I'm okay. I mean, my bachelor's degree is essentially literature. And for that degree we had to take Shakespeare 1 and 2 actually when I did it. And so one of them, whichever one, but one of them was the comedies and sonnets, I believe. And then the second class was the histories and tragedies.
The histories and tragedies,
right.
Okay.
So histories would be like Henry V and stuff like that.
I'm not sure I've ever read one of the comedies.
So Midsummer Night's
Dream I read. Okay, yes. Yeah, I've actually went to go see that at the Globe
Taming
Theater.
of the Shrew, I think.
Taming of the Shrew is a comedy?
Yeah,
okay.
Comedy.
I've seen 10 Things I Hate About You. That's my only connection.
Well,
with
then you know the
Shrew.
entire story.
Yeah, so I know the plot. Yeah.
Yeah. I was actually wondering. Let's real quick. Okay, so you've got 10 Things I Hate About You, Taming of the Shrew. You have, you could say West Side Story is
Romeo and Juliet. Yeah.
Is there anything in Hamlet? I mean, you've got Sons of Anarchy. Started out with the whole Hamlet.
I think the
thing.
Lion King is somewhat inspired by Hamlet.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
There's some parallels.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah. There is. Yeah. The son.
I'm not sure it's official or whether
the brother kills the king, and then
the uncle's in charge, and
right.
he has to come back and.
Okay. So is there anything from Macbeth? Is there any?
This
would make an easy mobster.
There's
a gangster type of thing.
There's an Akira Kurosawa version.
Now I've heard of that.
It takes place
Japanese
in Japan.
one.
The Throne of Blood.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it. That'd actually be really cool to watch. A Kurosawa movie at some point, like Hidden Fortress or something. Or Seven Samurai. I saw that when I was a kid. That's really good.
That's the only one I've seen.
That's the Magnificent Seven.
Right. I knew that.
I almost said rip-off. It's the opposite of a rip-off. The source material for the rip-off.
Steve McQueen wasn't in the Japanese version.
No. But
really
Toshiro Mifune was.
Really doesn't count.
He's pretty good.
So, I was thinking like this would really lend itself to kind of a mobster film. easily,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
I
like
think so. I think so.
maybe even like Sopranos type of thing.
There's got to be one, right?
Where you've got the
Somebody
the
must have done
kingpin
that.
gets knocked off by one of the lieutenants or one of the captains or whatever.
Yep.
But I couldn't find any reference to it, which I thought was kind of surprising.
Somebody's done that.
At least loosely, right?
Yeah, they must have.
No, people are screaming right now. It's this movie. It's
Right,
this movie.
right.
Idiots.
Yeah.
Well, let us know. Comment and let us know which movie.
Supposedly, a lot of the prequel trilogy in Star Wars is kind of based on Othello. Again, loosely, just sort of the relationship between Darth Vader and Anakin and Padme and their arc towards the end. I think in Episode 3, pretty much. Doesn't so, but so when somebody told me that before the movie came out, I thought there was going to be like a love triangle, and they just didn't do that. I totally thought there'd be a relationship between Obi-Wan and Padme, and they never went that route. I think that would have been pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. I need to go back and watch or read Othello, one of the two.
Mm-hmm. I read it in high school again. It's been a long time. So.
Right. Well, it's certainly been a long time for me too. I saw. I think Lawrence Fishburne actually played in a dramatic feature.
Right. That sounds
Othello,
right.
and
That sounds right.
Really good, if I remember correctly.
I bet. That's another one. That's a bit. I think that if I'm not mistaken, that's another one of these later plays.
Yeah.
Where I think Shakespeare was like depressed or something, or just.
No,
he just had some bad experiences in life, and there's some negativity.
I mean, he did change as he got older, but he was, this is how he made his money, and so he was whatever the people would pay to see, whether it's a comedy or tragedy or a history.
I wonder if times were changing in England, and maybe it wasn't even so much from him. Maybe it was the tastes of the audience. Maybe. As the Elizabethan era came to an end and James was king, maybe things were going better, so people were more in the mood to sit and watch a tragedy. Maybe like when you're like, the world, it was pretty turbulent in the early Elizabethan period. People may not have been in the mood to watch like a tragedy. They want to go and see a comedy. They want to see Romeo and Juliet, something like that. I don't know.
Well, that is a tragedy.
Romeo and Juliet, yeah. Well, yes, that's true. That's true. But it's more entertaining. It's lighter.
Well, I mean, you're talking about historical tragedies because some of the histories were tragic, but like Othello's a tragedy.
Caesar,
Macbeth, Julius Caesar, but those are based on real things or loosely based on real events, right?
I don't know about Othello.
But even I think Romeo and Juliet, I believe, were as well.
Yeah, it's based on
loosely based on
somebody else's play too. I
right.
think. I can't remember who, because these histories and tragedies, they usually come from Raphael Holinshed, the Chronicles.
Yeah.
But I think that Romeo and Juliet was someone else's play that he redid. Like the play, basically.
Yeah.
I read some of. There's only, I want to say 3 of his plays that are just original plots.
Original.
So it's The Tempest. The Tempest, maybe Love's Labour's Lost, and Midsummer Night's Dream are just completely original. They're not from histories. They're not from some chronicle.
Right.
They're just he made up a plot, which is not much. It's got 39 plays, right? Give or take.
Right.
And
there's no copyright laws.
No, not really. Not really. Only
and
copyright law was a guy showing up with a sword, I imagine.
Probably. And I kind of reconciled this when I found out. I think it was when I when I was in college that I found out that he wasn't that original. Shakespeare wasn't, that is. But I reconciled it by the fact that we don't know who those other people are. We've never really heard of them. Shakespeare was just so much better.
Yeah.
And that says a lot.
Yeah.
So
where do you come down on all these ideas that he didn't really write his plays and stuff like that? That there was some.
I don't know. I'm not. I don't do Shakespeare. I don't like. That's not my field.
Your opinion wouldn't count for much. You're saying? Yeah,
I don't. Yeah. I guess what it comes down to is I really don't give a shit.
Well, I mean, the plays got written, right? So it doesn't really matter.
I think I was told one time I was taking a class in it was like Middle English or Old English or something like that. Which, if you've ever read it, it's phonetic, right? I mean, they wrote phonetically. There's no canonical way of spelling things. There's no dictionaries.
There's no agreed upon orthography. Yeah.
So like Chaucer, if you ever read Chaucer, it's Middle English. It's all over the place.
Yeah.
And
I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand about the nomenclature with that is that there's Old English, Middle English, and Modern English.
Right.
And that Shakespeare, I think most people off the street would refer to Shakespeare as being Old English. They would think, but
it wouldn't be Old English at all.
No, it's definitely not. But I think
It's
I think
somewhere
a lot
between
of
that
people,
middle and modern. You know?
It's early modern.
Right.
I mean, we can understand it.
But Shakespeare,
you know?
I mean,
you can't understand if you're not educated. You can't understand Chaucer.
Right.
You can't read.
If you listen to it, though, that's the thing. If you listen to it, if somebody reads it the way it's supposed to be read,
right.
Phonetically, it makes sense.
And Old English, for me, is just a completely different language.
Old English is
it's like Danish or something.
Weird, yeah.
Like
it's
I read Beowulf in a parallel, with the Old English, and I would look and I'd be like, what does that even say? Again, if you know how to spell it, you'd figure out this crazy word that was written was like the word for shield,
right?
And it sounded like shield, but it looks nothing like it on the page.
Right.
So it's you have to have an education in how to read it in order to read it. Whereas Shakespeare, I think, if you give it a fair shot and you pay attention, you're going to understand what they're saying.
Right.
It's pretty much, it's very similar to the way people talk now.
Right. And I think, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong and go out and look this up, but I think, we have, Shakespeare spelling his own name multiple times. And I think multiple times he spelled it differently. Mm-hmm. So, it was more about phonetics and less about precision in grammar.
Yeah, people didn't write things the same way. No, I did part of my master's thesis on George Washington. I did a lot of his letters that he wrote himself. Mm-hmm. And it was all over the place. He was spelling things differently every single time. Not his own name, but lots of different things coming out that way. So,
but it was, it's difficult. Shakespeare's difficult to read. When you see it acted out, it's totally different. And then you go, oh, that's what means.
Right.
But still, even there, a lot of the insults you don't get. A lot of the compliments you don't get. A lot of the
the references to
a lot of the references.
We were talking about the references in Blazing Saddles. This is that times 100.
Right.
I mean, it's completely alien society you're trying to understand.
And so when we talk about this stuff, where he's referencing like the gunpowder plot, that happened like I think 1605.
That sounds right.
And that's why they think this was written about 1606 rather than 1603, because of all these references that historians get as being, now we would never have gotten that, like the equivocation, and there's certain things that he says right off the bat that I guess were said by some of the co-conspirators in the gunpowder plot. But again, we wouldn't get that. People of the time, though, because it was such a scandal, so sensational, people of the time would have gotten that. But that's what he's that's what he's doing. So
equivocation was something I had to read about. I didn't. That's not on the tip of my tongue,
Right.
I couldn't care less whether someone's secretly Catholic.
I think I am going to start using it though, just about everything.
Yes.
Not just about
like as a behavior.
Yeah, as a behavior.
Yeah, sure. That's probably a good marriage
technique. Wife asked me, where have you been? Then I can, dig into the equivocation.
I haven't not been.
I haven't
in the
not
garage.
been drinking and cavorting out all night.
Yeah.
But if I was, it wouldn't have been.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe we should pour some scotch.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I've got these glasses, which are
those are fancy.
The appropriate. They are Glencairn glasses, and they have an outline of the country of Scotland. Mm-hmm. They make it look like an island, which
of course it is.
May have benefited the Scottish over the years if that were.
Sean Connery would have agreed with that.
And there's my clan name written on the glass.
Also his last name.
I did bring ice. I wasn't sure how you take your scotch. Maybe we could do one neat, one on the rocks. I think on the rocks is fine.
I don't,
I'm not a purist about such things. So.
Well, I mean, there is a reason to drink it neat. Now, these glasses, so these are the Glencairn glasses. They're kind of a tulip-shaped glass, the short stem on it, no stem really. And this is kind of the go-to glass for people that drink whiskey, connoisseurs of
now
whiskey.
Now, we're going to do this one rocks or no?
No, we'll do it neat. This one neat, yeah. Oh, God, that smells really good.
It does, doesn't it? It smells smooth.
Smelling the cork there. But I'm actually writing an article about the best kind of glasses to drink premium spirits in.
Premium spirits?
Yeah, actually investigating the Glencairn as we speak. I am writing again. I'm writing for barleycorndrinks.com. Mm-hmm. You go out there, please subscribe. You'll find.
It's barleycorndrinks.com. Yeah. Last time you just said barleycorn.com.
Yeah, well, I was wrong. So Barleycorn, there's an awards, like a spirit award called the John Barleycorn Society Spirit Awards, and I think that's barleycorn.com. But the content that I'm going to be writing for is barleycorndrinks.com. So please look me up. And cheers.
Cheers. Schlengewaar. Smells good. We didn't mention what we're drinking.
Oh, yeah, I guess we should.
Well, I think we got it across that it's a single malt scotch, but it's specifically Aberfeldy.
Mm-hmm. 12-year-old.
I tried to match the region where MacBeth supposedly took place. That's the best I could do.
What region was it? Lowland, Highland?
Perthshire. Highlands.
Okay.
So that's supposedly the right area.
This tastes really, it tastes like a Highland scotch.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's a Highland single malt, aged 12 years.
Kind of fruity.
Really?
Yeah, I do get that.
You're better at this than I am.
A little bit of citrus and peach.
Yeah, maybe. I guess I know what you mean by that. But see, now you put that idea in my head.
Right.
Now that's all I can taste.
I was telling Dave off air before we started that tasting notes are the biggest load of BS out there for drinks, because what happens is if I tell you as you're drinking something, God, do you taste that cinnamon? Automatically you're going to taste that cinnamon.
Right.
If I say, oh, can you taste that kind of burnt caramel taste there, kind of at the back, and you go, oh yeah, I can kind of get that. So it doesn't matter what I say. Do you get that frog crap? Like right at the base. Oh yeah, it tastes just like frog crap.
Yeah, I don't actually know what frog crap. That
but if I knew what it tasted like, that would be it.
Yeah. I can imagine.
So the best advice is ignore tasting notes. Try it yourself. If you like it, you like it. Well, this is a really good Scotch. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's pretty tasty. Got it down at Total Wine in El Paso, and the place is amazing.
Yeah, we don't have.
They're not a sponsor, by the way. I just love.
Although
that place.
if they want to be,
yes, definitely we would accept them.
We would.
Maybe some kind of place like that.
Yeah,
get a lot more listeners. We can bother you guys with
for sure
ads.
Do you think so? What would they have? I guess I could ask myself that. So we're looking at 11th century, 12th century is about the MacBeth, like the real MacBeth story, right?
Okay.
Whiskey goes back from, we're thinking like 500, 600, 700 AD to Ireland.
Okay, originally
and then to Scotland. And then they just kind of took off with it, and everybody sort of made it. So they would have been drinking this. I mean, they would have been drinking it. But some things that I don't know about are things like aging. Like this is aged 12 years in probably American oak barrels.
Yeah.
Charred oak barrels. So
I think that custom goes back more to like the early 1800s.
Yeah, I think
the aging.
Maybe I would say maybe 17th century,
maybe.
So 1600s at the very oldest.
Okay.
Yeah, very oldest.
Because it was about replacing sherry. Didn't we have this discussion before?
Yeah,
they were originally sherry casks.
No, it was brandy. It was replacing brandy. That's and that would have been 19th century. Yeah, you're right. That's when that bug that we talked about.
It was the Napoleonic War. Oh, it was the phylloxera.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
that's
phylloxera.
right. That's right.
And actually, I take that back. So actually, I believe charring might have been invented here in the U.S. In the 18th century with bourbon.
Nice.
But neither here nor there. They would have had just spirit water. They would have had white.
Yeah.
White, moonshine.
Right. The brownness of whiskey, as I'm learning from doing the show, comes from the barrel, the aging process. Basically, when you make alcohol, it comes out clear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I think generally speaking, that's just what happens. So,
right. It should.
Except, I guess, wine.
Well, wine you don't distill, remember?
Wine you don't distill,
yeah.
Okay.
So when you do distill it, you make brandy, and then that comes out white.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then they age it.
And then they age it in something, all right.
Oftentimes, what a lot of the cheap stuff will do now is they'll just color it. They'll actually put a caramel coloring in.
Yeah, I could see why people might do that.
Right.
You might be able to produce something tasty that way.
Not
putting in
really.
some kind of additives. I mean,
the really cheap stuff.
Not necessarily caramel, but you could
look at the really cheap stuff, and I'm telling you, go look at like a whiskey at the very bottom. Okay, look at the bottom shelf, and then look below that, like on the floor. There's there's one called 10 High, for example.
Okay.
Now, if you look at the label, it'll say 51% bourbon and then like 49% neutral spirits.
Neutral spirits.
Vodka.
Okay. Yeah, vodka.
So they take 51%. In order to be called a bourbon, it has to be that, 51%. Okay. So, or whiskey rather, not bourbon. So they'll take 51% whiskey, mix it with 49% vodka because it's cheaper.
Right.
Right. And then
just add in some coloring.
Shake it up. Yeah, shake it up real good and put it on, like I said, the bottom shelf. And
that doesn't sound good.
It's terrible.
That does not sound appealing.
Terrible. And actually what's even worse is the smell of that stuff. That's one where if you nose it, if you smell it, you'll tell right away.
What is the phrase neutral grain spirit? I know you used that about vodka before, but those words are just falling on deaf ears to me. Or not on deaf ears, but falling.
Well, it shouldn't have a taste.
Understand them.
It shouldn't have a taste. So a brandy, even unaged brandy, that's totally clear. It'll smell, and it'll taste like wine.
Right.
You have to water it down a little bit to get it, but it'll have a taste to it. Tequila. Even white tequila tastes like tequila, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So vodka it's supposed to taste like nothing. It's supposed to taste like alcohol, just pure alcohol.
Right.
So you can make it taste like anything you want.
Sure.
You could,
as is done by
theoretically, put like a bourbon flavoring in it or a rum flavoring in it or something like that and make it taste like that. As a matter of fact, they sell, if you go like Amazon or something like that, you'll find rum flavoring and Scotch flavoring and stuff like that.
So it's not So I guess I was parsing that phrase neutral grain spirit as it was a neutral grain. But what it is it's a grain spirit that is neutral, right? Okay.
Right. Yeah, so vodka's a weird one because you can make it with, I mean, they make it with potatoes, right? I mean, that was always a famous one with Russian potatoes.
Yeah.
But you really just make it with grain. So you could actually make vodka with rice, quinoa, barley, wheat. I mean, anything that you can make, anything you make booze with, you can make vodka with it.
Right.
You just try to get the taste out of it. Now, one of the ways to do that is through the distillation process, where you just take everything out of it, like all the taste and everything, which you wouldn't want to do for a whiskey, right? You'd want to have.
You want those notes.
Yeah, you want the tastes in there. So.
Definitely. What do you think? You like this one? It's pretty good. Oberfeldy.
No, it's
I'm
very
probably
good.
pronouncing that horribly, by the way.
You'll post it in the.
They're very tricky.
The details, right?
What's that?
You'll post it in the details, right?
Post it in the details.
Yeah. For the episode, I mean, you'll tell everybody what that is. And
yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. No, I don't really do that.
You don't?
No.
No, you should.
We don't have any details posted. Oh yeah. I guess in a little blurb.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I do mention what we're drinking. So
it is really him that does it. He's usually drunk when he does it, so he doesn't remember what he's doing.
Nice.
Yeah, but anytime.
This company is owned by John Dewar, by the way.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, the same guy from Dewar's, that's a blend, right?
Dewar's is a blend, yeah.
One of my friends used to exclusively drink Dewar's when we were younger.
But I think you might want to Google Dewar's. I think Dewar's is owned by one of those big conglomerates that I've
could be. There's a company called
before.
John Dewar and Sons, but I don't know if that's a subsidiary of some other.
It's probably the same.
Some Belgian conglomerate.
Irish whiskey's funny because there used to be, I think before like the 1920s, there were hundreds of Irish whiskey distilleries, and then I think by the time the 80s or 90s rolled around, there were like 4.
Huh.
There were like very few of them, and the same with Scotch. So you had, just a handful of them. They've bounced back. I think what happened, if I remember correctly, I think in like the 1920s or before then, for World War I, I think England or the UK started taxing grain like very heavily.
Oh, okay.
And so it put a lot of the distilleries in Scotland and Ireland out of business.
Okay.
And they just kind of never recovered. So
maybe that's the corn laws.
Well, their version of it.
I can't remember what corn laws are, but that's some phrase that occurs to me.
Well, we did it. We did it. I think in 1917 or 1918, we outlawed the production of alcohol. Like before Prohibition.
Before Prohibition.
We actually prohibited the production of alcohol
as a wartime measure.
As a wartime measure, and then it just kind of rolled right into Prohibition after that. So
that's when you said that barleycorn. The barleycorn website that you're on, they had these parties when they were shutting down for Prohibition called like goodbye to Mr. Barleycorn or John Barleycorn parties and stuff. So that's kind of fun.
That was always the first part or the first episode of Boardwalk Empire. I don't know if you ever saw that show.
Yeah, I did actually.
Yeah, the very first episode was the night before Prohibition.
God bless those idiots.
Yeah, God bless those idiots.
Washington.
Yeah, and so everybody's loading up shopping carts and baby carriages. That was one of the things.
Yeah.
Like baby carriage loaded up with booze and stuff like that.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
to tell people you're going to do that, people are just going to buy it all up.
Of course. Well, they didn't care.
I guess, yeah.
They were sure that they could turn all of the, I think all the prisons could be turned into poorhouses or something like that. Like they'd have no use for jails anymore because, nobody to jail because everybody's sober. Yeah, okay.
I think
that work out.
Kind of going through the same thing here now with the drug war sort of coming to an end.
Yeah,
I think
I know, right?
It's weird.
Well, part of it, a big part of it.
Big part of it,
yeah.
though. Big part of it.
The real senseless part of it.
Yeah, right. I mean, why can't people smoke pot if they want to smoke? What's that hurting?
Right.
Nobody smokes pot and kills somebody, and yet we have alcohol. Definitely, people hurt each other when they're
absolutely.
So it doesn't make a lot of sense.
And I don't think anybody smoked themselves to death versus drunk themselves to death.
I mean,
right?
it's a bad habit. It can be a bad habit for people.
Right.
I've seen people lose their ambition, in life and things like that. I had friends when I was in high school and stuff like that went from being talented people headed somewhere in their life to sitting on the couch all day eating Doritos and smoking pot. And
yeah, but I saw that with booze too. I saw that people that would drink themselves in college.
Yeah, it seemed to be less quickly. I've seen people go bad with alcohol over the course of decades.
Well,
I didn't really see anybody get into drinking
with
so
the amount
much.
that these guys are drinking, that my friends are drinking. But I remember, in a fraternity, I had the guys next door to my room. They were just smoking out all the time.
Yeah.
And one's now like an investment banker, super successful.
Yeah.
The other one's like archaeologist or something like that. Like works for a certain state. I won't say which one, but
works getting artifacts back from the Nazis. And
no,
traveling the globe.
He carries a whip.
Yeah, it's good work if you're
good guy. But then I knew guys that just never got off the bottle,
Yeah.
And
I've seen it go both ways with pot. I've seen people go through that phase in their teen years and then, go to law school. And then I've seen other people that all their promise in the world was completely destroyed by, they just never did anything with their lives.
Right.
So I guess to some degree it's about your character and your drive and other things rather than just the drug.
I don't know. It's hard to say that there's not something genetically related to it, though.
Probably
some people are more addicted to things than other people, and
oh my God, people talk about it so much. I remember like friends of mine that started smoking pot would talk about weed.
Yeah.
All the time. It was like, why are we talking about this? So, here I am doing a podcast talking about alcohol. I don't actually talk about it constantly. Like it's not my only subject of discourse.
Well, it is my own. I write about it, so it's my outlet.
It's professional.
I get paid.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
I get paid to do that.
Exactly.
All right, so some other things. Let's see. You've got this sin of being a woman in here.
Right. Unsex me.
Yeah, unsex me.
I thought that took me a second. I was like,
well, there was so... Okay, so...
Because she means she can't be ruthless, essentially, if she's a woman.
Right.
Which... That's a weird idea of humanity that I don't share. I've definitely seen people of both genders be plenty ruthless.
I think there might be a time, it might be a reference to the time in there. But so you have Lady MacBeth that it serves as kind of like an Eve to Macbeth's Adam here, where he
Very
writes her.
So. I didn't think of that.
So he writes her a letter after he gets his prophecy from the witches or from the weird sisters. Sends her a letter and tells her what the prophecy is and says, that they called me the Thane of whatever, Cawdor.
Right.
And that came true. And also, they called me the king that shall be.
Right.
And then she runs with that. She's like, oh, my God, you're going to be the king. I have to. Now, that means we have to kill Duncan. I mean, she automatically goes there. She doesn't go anywhere else. She doesn't go like, oh, gosh, how can we make this happen? It's right to, okay, we're going to kill the current king.
This is I think that I'm sure feminists have had a ton of fun with this play, and for good reason. There's a lot of these issues here. But I think that this was a time when an ambitious woman, that's what she couldn't be. She couldn't be ambitious for herself.
That was evil, though.
It's considered, it's considered, it'd be Machiavellian, right? It's like, why Machiavelli was demonized and considered to be atheistic and evil because of the ambition,
right?
And just saying, yes, I'm ambitious, I want to be in charge of things, and that's unforgivable, especially for a woman in this time period.
Right.
It's kind of what Hillary Clinton has run afoul of in her life. Most of the demonization of her is based on
all female politicians that have reached a level of power at some point, whether it's and you look on both sides of the aisle. Look at what's that? The ambassador, Nikki Haley.
I don't know who that is.
She was a UN ambassador under, I think, Trump.
Okay.
I think she was like a governor of politician from the southern states. But she's been accused of the same things that Hillary. That too ambitious and too mouthy and all this other stuff. Right.
Nobody would ever say it. I mean, Bill Clinton said he wanted to be president, and everybody was like, "Yeah, of course you do." Whereas basically, Hillary Clinton didn't pull her punches about being the same way. She wanted to be in charge of things, and people hated her for it.
She's a mouthy woman.
Yeah, she's a mouthy woman. She's uppity or something.
Right,
she's getting out of place. I think there's a lot of people still, and especially on the right side of the spectrum, who think that way. That's not an appropriate thing for a woman to want to do.
So here you have Lady MacBeth, who is, I mean, you could say she's
Nikki Haley was from South Carolina.
South Carolina, okay. You could say that Lady MacBeth is the perfect wife. I mean, she is very supportive of her husband.
Absolutely.
She's ambitious for him.
You want to know if you trust somebody, have them do a murder with you. That's a pretty good.
Have them cover up your murder.
Have them cover exactly. Have them bury a body for you.
Have it be their idea.
That's
how she's like, what are you doing with those daggers? You need to make sure that they're okay. Here, I'll go do it.
Yeah. Are you standing here with those daggers in your hand?
What are you doing? Yeah. So I mean. And she put the daggers out for him. In fact, that's a wife.
Yes,
I want my wife to be just like her in some respects.
But they both have this breakdown,
right? Well,
because of it.
That's the moral.
I mean, that's the part that didn't feel real to me.
What's the breakdown?
I feel like if you're ambitious enough and ruthless enough to murder a king, you're gonna sleep fine after doing it. If you're that kind of person, that's what I found to be unrealistic about both of their characters. Is they moved towards treachery so fast, really not with, I mean, he, I guess, thinks about it a little bit and equivocates about doing it a little bit, but they do this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden they have remorse. I thought that didn't strike a true tone with me.
Well, he before her, she talks him into it.
Right.
She says, screw your courage to the sticking place, which has become a famous line. Isn't that what she says?
I don't know. That's a cool one though. There's a million good lines in this.
And so I mean, she becomes his motivator. Right, his muse, so to speak, whispering into his ear, "Come on, do this. You got to do this. Don't you?" She first suggests it to him that he's going to sleep here under our roof. Yeah. I'll get to kill him in my own, under my own roof or something like that. I was thinking about it in terms of him, not so much her. So they have a psychological breakdown because of the murders. Because one murder begets another, begets another, begets another. Like he keeps having to kill people to cover up and to keep his place, right? Because he's so paranoid about losing what he got. So
and because of the prophecy.
Right. It was interesting. Like he just came off the field of battle after killing all these people.
Right.
And he's worried about these murders. So it's not the act of killing. It was the act of treachery that ultimately he had a problem with.
I think it's just that you can't have a king killer be okay with being a king killer for political reasons. It's like they used to have these rules in American film where if somebody committed a crime, that was okay, but they had to be punished for the crime. That was just a necessary part of it was against the law to do that otherwise. I think that's what's going on here. I think they're trying to placate the king, the actual king, King James, having somebody murder a king and then fall apart because of it.
That's sort of what I got.
Doesn't ring true to me.
But that's that is a theme. I mean, you've got. Well, actually, it's not a theme because, like in Hamlet, Hamlet's uncle doesn't have a problem after killing his brother.
Neither does the guy's wife.
Hamlet does.
Hamlet has a lot of trouble with the idea of killing his uncle.
The wife doesn't know. The wife just knows that she's now married to brother-in-law.
Oh, I always thought it was implied that Gertrude and Claudius were in it together.
No.
Really?
Yeah, Hamlet's mother was innocent of the killing, but to him,
I thought they were like having an affair, and that's why they got together to get rid of. I can't remember what the king's name is in Hamlet, but
I can't either.
And they get ready.
Uncle.
Yeah, I don't know. Scar, Mufasa.
Right, Mufasa. But no, she didn't told her get thee to a nunnery. I mean, that's where you should be after your husband's been killed. You shouldn't be married to somebody else.
See, I feel like I have to read it. I thought that was said to Ophelia, get thee to a nunnery. I may have.
That was his mom.
Yeah, I probably have that wrong. Yeah. He definitely has a lot of choice words for her. He calls her a lot of
God,
names
yeah. Well,
stuff,
he's mad about that whole thing. But I can't think of. And again, this is where viewers, the Shakespeare experts, will be like, "Oh, it's this one, you idiots." So again, if we're idiots and there are other plays where this happens, let us know.
Yeah, send us emails.
But no, I feel like though there are like psychological ramifications to murder, like that Shakespeare's explored,
of course,
but that he's explored before. I just can't think of.
Hamlet's a good example.
Merchant of Venice.
Othello is a good example.
Yeah.
I think it ends up being kind of a rage killing when Othello murders Desdemona, right?
Right. Yes.
But there's definitely a lot of guilt and that. You want some ice for the second one?
Yeah.
All right.
We'll tipple with ice.
We'll go along with keeping the microphone in the ice bucket like we were doing in past episodes. We're not doing that anymore.
Well, I could do sound effects.
The ice all froze together in the
son of a biscuit. Tell you what, pour the scotch in the ice bucket.
I'm just joking. I think that's a terrible idea. I was actually taking you seriously for a second.
You did look up. You're like, really? Even a little bit of ice water will open it up a bit.
Just a little ice water?
Yeah, that'll be fine. Yeah, that'll work.
So we're recording in the afternoon, so
right.
Probably not going to have as much to drink as we usually do.
Right. Well, until later.
Also, we had a Kentucky Derby party yesterday. I had never had a mint julep before.
Really?
Yeah. Tasty little drink. I don't know why they're not more popular, like outside of Kentucky Derby. You never hear about anybody.
A lot of sugar and really sweet.
True.
They actually used to serve. They used to serve those as medicinals. That's actually where
a mint julep
came from. His stomach kind of settled his stomach down. Which
I've
you can
had
see,
a hot
right?
toddy for medicinal purposes. I had a cold one time.
That cured it, I'm sure.
No, but it made me feel better.
When I was a kid, my mom, and this probably explains a lot. My mom used to make what was called vanilla milk. Warm vanilla milk.
Warm vanilla milk.
Yeah,
okay.
So she would take some milk, warm it up, mix it with sugar and like a teaspoon of vanilla extract. And this is like half a cup, so maybe like 4 or 5 ounces of total. Do you know what the alcohol ABV is for vanilla extract?
No, I don't know.
It's 90% alcohol.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
So she'd give me a teaspoon, basically a teaspoon of alcohol to a little kid.
Nice.
And she would always tell me, later in life when I have kids, just give him some warm vanilla milk. You always slept so well after you got some. Yeah. Because it knocked me out.
Sounds like it's like an origin story for you.
It is, right, yeah. Why do you have such a proclivity towards alcohol? Gee, I wonder.
Learned it in the cradle.
That's right. Well, I think they used to, didn't they? I've heard of teething, like rubbing scotch or something on.
Oh, yeah. My dad used to talk about doing that. I don't think he ever actually did it. But he would joke about doing that with my nephew and my brother when they were babies.
Sometimes you want to do it, but.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's definitely times when you want a kid. I just remember wanting my kids when they were babies to go to sleep. Like I've never wanted anything in my life. Like just wanting to have peace for a few minutes, like.
I have a theory that a baby's cry is so annoying, so that we will do whatever it needs us to do to get it to stop doing that.
Yep.
If it was pleasant, like if a baby would cry and we're like, oh, that sounds so nice, we'd let them go on and on.
Oh yeah.
Right. But
I remember one time
by design we can't freaking stand it. We're like, my God, go to sleep.
Alex was a baby and he was having like a really fussy day, all I wanted to do was brush my teeth, and I walked like 10 feet away and I'm trying to brush my teeth and he starts crying again. My hand was like shaking trying to get through the tooth. I was like, I'm just going to power through and finish this and then deal with whatever it is.
Right. This is an experience of two house dads, by the way.
Yeah, pretty much.
So Lady Macbeth, that's a big part of it. I feel like we should talk a lot more about that. I saw that she was Shakespeare did he juxtapose her with Macduff's wife?
Yes, he did.
So,
Macduff's wife is much more, I don't know about lack of ambition, but she definitely is kind of like a saintly wife.
She's more focused on her husband, or no, more focused on her children, and and
right.
I mean, you would say that she is a stereotype of a wife.
She sort of goes kind of meekly to getting her and her son murdered. That actually happens on screen.
Right.
They actually get killed.
Yeah.
Unlike Lady Macbeth, who dies just.
I know, that's so unsatisfying.
It's really
so unsatisfying.
There must have been like a speech or something. I mean, for such a character.
That's actually
like
one of the best arguments for it being like an abridged version.
Yeah, I think that's the most notable thing that's missing is a scene of Lady Macbeth dying, because they sort of hint that she killed herself.
Right.
Why did that happen? What was going on? She goes from appearing sleepwalking, doing the out damn spot.
She was crazy. I mean, she
had lost it.
Yeah.
Right. That was actually candidate for my biggest surprise. Was that was a sleepwalking scene?
Yeah.
Where she's doing out damn spot, and that was strange to me. That surprised me.
They called it sleepwalking. We would call it. She's just traumatized. She's in shock or something like that. I mean, it's PTSD of what she's done,
right?
Type of thing. Right. So she's clearly not in the same moment that everybody else is,
I think that's kind of what I'm talking about with the way these tragic characters behave in this play. There's like some psychiatry, sort of like folk psychiatry going on in the play. That seems pretty realistic. Like I said, except for the dramatic change to suddenly being traumatized by a murder from not caring about doing it. It didn't seem like. But there's a speech about it actually. I think they're trying to heal Lady Macbeth.
It's the doctor.
The doctor's like,
this isn't something.
Canst thou not minister to a mind disease, pluck from the memory a rooted sorrow?
Right.
It's
let the patient,
like
let the patient heal himself.
Right. It's like we almost medicine in those days. Now a doctor in 980 AD could not have done anything for you. You'd better off staying away from the doctor.
Well, you had surgeon barbers at the time.
Right. There were things.
They served two roles.
They could probably do. They could set a broken bone. They could probably maybe clean up your wounds you wouldn't.
They could bleed you. If you had a disease, they would cut you. And bleed
well, there's all that stuff that's worse than the ailment.
Put leeches on you.
Yeah. But I always think that's where we are with psychiatry today. Mm-hmm. Some of the medications they give people do genuinely help them, but it's almost like the way medicine used to be in the 1600s or in 980. It's like it's not there yet. Like the science is not really there yet.
I just don't know enough.
You can't cure people. There's no cures for psychiatric diseases. Not really. I mean, unless there's some specific medical cause, I guess sometimes. But someone who's schizophrenic, it's just about managing their symptoms, for the rest of their life.
Sure.
So I thought it was funny that they're talking about psychiatry in 1600, and it's like that's really the same thing. Really can't pluck their sorrows from their mind. He
had a lot of fun with psychological issues. Or psychiatric issues. Shakespeare did. I mean, because there's all of these quandaries that his protagonists and antagonists face throughout his plays. Mm-hmm. That trying to figure out what's the best route, what should I do, trying to figure things out. And, the monologues are all internal dialogue that's expressed to the audience, right? And people asking, if I do this, then and talking about the choices that they have and so forth. And he really liked to explore a lot of the mental.
Anybody ever do that in modern films? Those kind of monologues to sort of show what a character's thinking? It would seem
I don't think so.
Contrived. It would be.
You see it in like comic books, graphic
You
novels.
definitely see it in comic books.
I mean, that's where a lot of it takes place. But in movies, it's some of the differences is in movies you have things like facial expressions that you can't get right in a play because
most people couldn't see you well enough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true.
Now the Greek plays, what they would actually do is they would wear a mask, and the mask would represent their
what kind of emotion.
Yeah, what kind of their emotion.
Also, I think the chorus would sometimes tell you what was going through somebody's head.
But they would, the tragedy comedy masks, that's where they come from. But they would put them on so that the audience would understand, oh, this is their state of mind, for this character.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
that's actually my other candidate for biggest surprise was I thought the Weird Sisters. I didn't realize they were characters diegetically appearing in the. I thought they were like a chorus that just said weird things like in the middle of the play. So I was kind of surprised that they actually interacted with Macbeth. I didn't know there was going to be a prophecy. I think that was probably my biggest surprise.
Right.
I thought that was also the fact that Lady Macbeth dies off stage just really shocked me. That's a strange choice for somebody to make. All the battles happen off stage.
Yeah.
Pretty much. I mean, that's kind of
the
refreshing.
only one-to-one is the Macduff and Macbeth.
Yeah, their fight, I suppose. Or you could probably film it. You could probably show that final battle. Is that Dunstan name?
They don't, though. Yeah, they don't, though. I mean, and like the murder of Duncan, that they don't show that. They showed the murder of Banquo.
Yeah, Banquo gets killed on screen. The children, Macduff's family gets killed on screen. So there's some of the violence.
Well, one
happens.
of the children. All my children? Or just one? Just one.
Right.
But that and his wife.
Did you see who played Banquo? It's a little bit more of a. It's a little more obscure.
That one.
He's in American Werewolf in London. You remember that movie?
Vaguely.
He's the guy who sort of figures out what's going. The doctor who figures out what's going on, and goes back to the town and like finds out he's a werewolf and like ends up.
The Scottish guy, like the Scottish guy in the Scottish Moors. Type of thing?
No.
Because that's where he gets bit, right?
He gets bit in. Actually, I think it's England.
Oh, is it England?
He gets bit and then goes back to London and is in the hospital because of his injuries. Yeah. And the doctor that's attending to him
that's Banquo.
Is John Woodvine, the guy that plays Banquo in his play.
What did Malcolm play in? Because that was bugging the hell out of me.
Robin Colcourt from Cheers, the British guy who's Kirstie Alley's boyfriend.
Okay, and what else though? Okay, you're right.
That's what I know him from. I couldn't think of anything.
Was he in like
else.
A Harry Potter movie?
Very well could have been.
Look that up.
I can look him up
on your magic box there.
But let's talk about something else while I'm looking it up. We don't want looking up.
Okay, you also have, as we mentioned, the Emperor himself is
Ian McDiarmid.
Yeah, is in that.
Do you know we are almost 10 years older than he was when he played the Emperor? He was not 40.
Really?
When he played the Emperor in Return of the Jedi. Is that crazy or what? That's why he's still
very good.
Fully armed and operational battle station.
Right.
That's a good one.
It's the magic of makeup. And then also the other guy, and I just remember him from like bit parts, and he's playing like some goon, different movies. But Macbeth's like assistant that went out, like his second that would go out and kill people.
Was that guy someone?
Yeah, like he's been a goon in different like English movies and stuff.
I can't picture. Oh. This guy,
he's been a villain.
The sergeant, first murderer, that guy?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what he's from. Sort of reckon he has one of those really 70s and 80s British faces.
Yeah.
Like there used to be this stereotype that British people had like terrible teeth. And it was sometimes you'd see people, you'd be like, were you not on fluoridation when you were growing up?
It was often true.
Yeah,
right,
it was true back in the day. It's not like that now.
I always remember there's a great SNL skit.
So Robin Colcourt was in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Okay.
I feel like that's something you might have
I
seen.
can see that.
That seems like up your alley. He's in a lot of stuff, a lot of TV shows.
Tell me Harry Potter. Find a Harry Potter. Make it so.
He was in Frida.
No, I wouldn't have seen that.
No, I didn't see that either. But he's in a whole bunch of Shakespearean stuff. He was in Extreme Ghostbusters, which what is that?
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, that must be a TV show.
Maybe a cartoon or something?
I used to watch the TV show of the cartoon.
The animated?
The real Ghostbusters. I used to watch that all. That's actually pretty good.
I just hated it because
I think he's the sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Okay. Yeah. I think you're right. I think I'm thinking Cheers.
It's definitely Cheers.
Yeah.
That's what you know him from. I mean, that's the number one thing. because he was on after
This is
Shelley Long
podcast.
left. Yeah,
great
right.
Podcast,
After
yeah.
Shelley Long left, he was on there with Kirstie Alley, I think, for several years.
Let's see. Getting back to it, I still want to figure out. Let's see, a movie where you have like a second in command kills the main guy and then has a downfall. That's the basic premise of the entire thing. There's got to be one. Let's see. I was thinking Godfather.
Godfather's
no.
similar, but he doesn't kill anybody in his own family. He has a murder that
The
brings
other,
him to
the other
front.
family kills him, right?
Yeah, the other guys. Yeah, the other guys shoot the father.
Yeah.
And Michael kills the person
everybody.
responsible
Yeah.
for that.
Uh-huh.
But the father lives.
He kills his brother.
Does he kill Fredo?
Yeah, kills Fredo.
Does
Or he has him killed when they're fishing. Remember, he's saying
Yeah.
all his saying the rosary. Pops him, dumps him in the lake.
Some of the stuff that happens in 2, the stuff that happens like in the 50s and stuff, is pretty boring to me. Like I sort of don't remember it very well.
That's the Academy Award.
I know.
Picture,
I really like the Robert De Niro bits, but the stuff with Cuba, I think I've tried to watch it a couple of times and I kind of got bored.
Wait, Cuba Gooding Jr. was in that movie?
Yeah, right. He would have been like 4.
I don't know what part he would have played.
Does Boys in the Hood count as a classic? Could we do that sometime?
We could. Absolutely, Boys in the Hood. There was actually, I think there was kind of one of those, that genre, like the gangster, that would fit here. But I'm just not familiar enough with them. I mean, I remember seeing Boys in the Hood, I remember seeing Juice. I could have sworn there was one where
New
you
Jack
had...
City might be?
So you had like the main gangster guy
I don't remember that movie.
killed
very well.
by...
I remember Wesley Snipes drops the guy off the bridge. And
Oh.
I don't remember if that's...
Was that Am I My Brother's Keeper? Is that one?
Oh, it's just see you wouldn't want to be you.
No.
I think.
Was that the line?
I think so.
It's a terrible
I think
line.
so. Yes, that's really sounded really cool back then, but doesn't hold up terribly well.
So, your biggest surprise was the killed off.
Either that they killed off Lady Macbeth off screen, or that the witches were actually participants in the plot of the play. I thought they were like a chorus. I just kind of pictured them. They just seemed like that's what they would be to me, the Weird Sisters.
Yeah.
Which is, I wonder if weird entered art the way we use it.
I was wondering
So
that
weird
too.
means fate
Okay.
in Anglo-Saxon.
Fate.
So you can see, why that's what they are. They're telling people. They're like the fates in ancient Greece.
Yeah.
I wonder if that word started meaning the way we use it because of these characters. Definitely that word applies, especially the way they're portrayed in this one that we watched. They're really crazy. Like the sisters.
Well, I mean, that's the thing you got to understand about the YouTube videos. It's direction. Direction is 99% of what we saw, right?
Did you do what I did? Did you like read it while watching the play?
I read it before
Okay.
I watched the play.
Because I was noticing, because I did that, I was doing it like parallel.
Right.
I noticed they cut a lot of stuff.
Well, there are different versions
There
of the
must
written
be.
play.
There must be, yeah.
Things have been added to it by different critics, and whoever published it would add stuff or take it away. And oftentimes they were director's notes that weren't in the original folio of 1623.
Okay.
So things were added. So much of a play is direction, right? And the director says, do it this way. And so you do it that way. And it could be ironic in one play, right? And in the other one, it could be tragic, right? The same line could be delivered multitude of different ways.
Yeah.
And
Just
so
hit the line differently, and it's going to have completely different
So
meaning.
the play we watched were Shakespearean. It was the Shakespeare like society, right? So you had all these, what we think of as top actors now, and they were all stage trained actors and Shakespearean actors at the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Ian McKellen, I was watching Magneto.
Gandalf, Magneto.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a
Magneto,
lot of
Gandalf,
stuff.
Dame Judi Dench. I was watching. It was M, right? Is it M? Yeah,
Yes,
M.
yeah, she's M, right.
So I mean,
I get Q and M mixed up. She's M.
So you're watching these people that you're used to seeing them perform in all these movies, but you're watching them in their native country, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like this is where they all train for the stage, and because the tradition of acting in England is stage. It's not movies, which is the tradition here.
I think that's true, yeah.
And I mean, we have Broadway and stuff like that, but it's a totally different scene, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't do a lot of rapping in the Globe Theater in Shakespeare's day.
It's not terribly different if
Well,
you think about it.
With Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean...
But my point is that these people were trained for that. So you've got very dramatic, heavy roles.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And he's really leaning into that.
Yeah.
Ian McKellen in this one.
And I was thinking, just actually before we walked in, like kind of one of my last things I was thinking about, like how would this go over, like if, what was the director of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes? It was...
why do I not know that?
He also did...
looks like Guy Ritchie, but it's not.
No,
it's before him.
He also did...
It's not the Train Spotting. It's not Danny Boyle, is it? I don't think so.
I don't
think so.
It might be Danny Boyle. He also did the one with Ewan McGregor and the Australian actress set in France.
McGregor and the Australian. Oh, Moulin Rouge.
Moulin Rouge. Thank you.
Rouge,
God,
yeah.
I can't believe I couldn't come up with that.
So it's Baz Luhrmann, who I've never heard of.
Baz Luhrmann. Well, you've seen
Luhrmann.
But you've seen his movies.
He's Australian. He directed Australia, and he directed Moulin Rouge.
He directed Australia? Really?
Yep. Yeah.
That's totally out of...
Yeah, I never saw that.
Yeah, that's not in the same wheelhouse at all. But in any case, I was wondering...
And Strictly Ballroom, which I think is kind of a cult classic. I think there are a lot of people who really like that. I haven't seen it.
He took Romeo and Juliet, updated it to Fair Verona, but it was set in the 20th century, right?
I think it was California, right? They went with I
think it was supposed to be like Acapulco type of place. Okay. It was like Mexico or something. But he updated it, right, to a modern time.
I thought it was great.
Could you do
really
that with Macbeth? I mean, could you have the same dialogue?
Sure. Absolutely.
So?
Yeah, you could almost, like you said, do like a gangster picture, although people don't really do those anymore. But you could do the byword is urban.
Yeah.
A version of that, like a gangster picture, like with Macbeth.
With the same dialogue, you think? I mean, because...
Yeah, but that was the fun of it, right? They had fun with that. Like, for instance, they refer specifically to their weapons.
The long sword. Hand me my long sword.
Hand me my rapier,
Yeah,
and he flashes the 9mm. It says rapier on the side.
Yeah.
I was like, I like that.
Yeah,
I actually
cool.
really enjoyed that movie. I haven't seen it in 20 years.
Well, I think all guns were called like the Brando's sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. And
like
so
that, yeah.
I think when the lieutenant says, "Throw down your swords," it's like it makes sense.
Yeah. Exactly. I think it's kind of fun to see people try to get around those sorts of things. I think you could do that with Macbeth. I don't see why you couldn't. There's a guy on YouTube.
Well, Macbeth they did. Sons of Anarchy was basically Macbeth up until the end. It was pretty much.
I watched the first 2 seasons of Sons of Anarchy. I didn't see any beyond that.
It was his dad was killed.
His dad's dead.
His dad's dead, and he was killed by the guy who's now leading the
he was. Okay.
SOA.
So he's like Malcolm.
And his mom is he's like Hamlet.
Oh, okay.
It was Hamlet. Did I say Macbeth? I'm sorry.
No, I was thinking. I think you did say Macbeth, but I was thinking it could be like Macbeth too, just
SOA
told from
totally,
the perspective of Malcolm.
Totally Hamlet.
Because he's sort of like a little softer, a little more artistic than some of the other guys in the biker gang.
He's smarter.
He's smarter, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So,
but I mean, so I guess this could be. I was just wondering. I don't know. I was just trying to rack my brain at some that had been made, but I just couldn't think of any.
I think Hamlet's a better comparison, though. Yeah, I think that's more spot on for Sons of Anarchy. That's interesting. I didn't think of that at the time.
Biggest surprise? My biggest surprise.
Yeah, what was your biggest surprise? Right, we didn't get to that.
My biggest surprise was it had to do with Lady. It was a little bit more nuanced. It had to do with Lady Macbeth.
Okay. Well, you're familiar with this before. This is not your first time reading Macbeth, right?
It was all the references to her being a woman, and it was all about taking away my womanhood.
Right.
For this and that, turn my milk to gall. Right.
Yeah.
So if somebody suckles at my breast, it's essentially poison, and I would take the baby that's suckling at my breast and dash its head in.
Yes.
There's like all these things about unsex.
They don't have children.
No.
At least not in the play. They don't.
No.
You don't see them.
No.
Strange.
That's why his progeny would never become. He was all worried about that. But it was all these references to unsex me, make me not a woman, and so forth. And then at the end of her, she ends up offing herself, we assume. It's almost like she succumbs to being a woman, right?
Right.
She doesn't face it like Macbeth ultimately faces it. He dies, but he faces it like a man.
Yeah.
Air quotes there.
Oh, I love what he says. What is it? He said, blow wind, come rack, at least we'll die with harness on our back.
Yeah.
I love that. That's good.
Yeah, and at the very end, even though he says, "Okay, so I know that you're going to kill me, but I'm still not going to kiss the ground that you walk on. Right. Let's go."
Yeah.
And
you're going to have to kill me. Yeah.
And Macduff kills him. Whereas Lady Macbeth just dies kind of a coward's death after it was implied that it was her fault all this happened in the first place because she talked him into it. Again, she's the Eve character.
Yeah.
To Macbeth's Adam.
Yeah, definitely.
And so I guess the surprise to me was just how far he took that. He took that analogy so far about blaming her for everything, blaming her womanhood for everything.
Right. I didn't think of the Eve. That's perfect. I mean, that's exactly, or Pandora, or something like one of those stories.
Right. So So she's the ultimate tragic character in this whole thing, right? She succumbs to, because...
Jimmy Buffett, also, everything's a woman is to blame.
Right, yeah.
There's a lot of classical sources that...
Yeah, well, but he does come back at the end and says it's my
his
own
own
damn
fault.
fault.
Yeah.
But I mean...
He's a dynamic character in that song.
Right.
Figures himself out. Yeah.
So I guess to me, my biggest surprise was just how far he took. I remembered reading like feminist interpretations of this play and many of Shakespeare's plays when I was kind of getting my bachelor's, but just to see it, and especially in light of how much things have changed. I read this for a class in college like 30 years ago, and things in 30 years have changed so much for women's equality and so forth, and so just with what we know and just kind of what's on everybody's mind, it's very stark, and these things just stand out, they jump out.
I feel like a lot of, well, I don't know if this is true, I'm not in academia, but it seems to me like a lot of people's response today would just be to not read this play. If there's a problematic description of a woman's character, you just skip it. I think it's more fruitful to discuss it. Talk about why is she like this? What was their society like?
That's the cancel culture kind of thing. Like, I just don't want to know about it, right?
Right.
But then again, you have to measure these things in context, and this was the feeling of 17th century England.
Sure. This is a window into society up until very recently. Right. The idea that a woman's proper place was behind the man, supporting him.
The witches are all women, and you can, whatever you want to call them, fates or whatever, and they're,
this reminds me of a thought that I had the other day. So I was somewhere, I can't remember where I was, and I heard this woman laugh. It was kind of this country lady, and she was sitting with her friends having drinks, and she laughed, and it sounded just like a witch. It was and I was like, oh my God, that woman. And I was thinking, that's why witches sound like that. Because laughing out loud in public is a sign that a woman is not doing womanly behavior.
It's a cackle.
It's like a cackle. So that gets associated with witches, who are women that don't follow the rules of these societies. And that's one way of viewing them. They're sort of bad women. That's a witch. Wow. Somebody that should be burnt at the stake. It dawned on me. I was like, that's why we associate that cackling.
That's interesting.
This woman like drinking in public and like laughing with her friends, perfectly acceptable in 2021. But in 1621, somebody would have literally probably put her in the
stocks.
In the stocks for doing that.
Probably
exactly.
so. This is an interesting tidbit. So, do you know where the term witch's brew comes from?
I mean, it seems to me like just a description of a thing a potion that a witch makes. No, what's the?
Well, it comes from women up until probably about the 17th century. Women were the primary makers of beer in the households.
Okay.
And they weren't very sanitary. They wouldn't sterilize things. They didn't know about any of that stuff. Oftentimes they'd use water, and beer was less risky than water because it was boiled.
Right.
They didn't understand that. But they
apparently could put beer in a barrel and just have it keep for a long time, which to me sounds dangerous. It could keep for a while
because of hops. Hops is a natural preservative. We talked about this last time. The resin thing. No, hops.
We did, yeah.
Hops naturally has resin, so.
I think we talked about that in the Marcus Aurelius episode.
Yeah. So if people got sickened because of the beer they were drinking, then oftentimes it wasn't. No, it's all right. Oftentimes it wasn't just the husband that got sick. It was husband, friends, a bunch of people that got sick as a result. They accused the person that made it of witchcraft, and she gave them witch's brew.
Okay.
So that's kind of the story behind that.
It's the etymology of that phrase. That's good.
Again, poor women get the.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of associations. Yeah, you could probably. So this is a big question about MacBeth.
Yeah.
And I want to see where you come down on this.
Okay.
Is the prophecy true, or is it self-fulfilling?
Oh.
Did he have an
That
agency?
is a great question. I was going to ask you that question.
Could he have just, it's like Total Recall. You watch that, and the question is, did that really happen or not?
Right.
And you never get an answer. And I don't think we're going to get an answer.
Go ahead, and you've got what you want. Give these people air.
Get your ass to Mars.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to do that one eventually, won't we?
Why not?
Although it's a classic. Well, it is a classic. Anyway, so.
I went to go see that. I was supposed to go see it. My dad and I were very excited to go see it. And we had to bring my sister. And at the last minute, my stepmom was like, she's too little to go see Total Recall. You guys can't see that. And I went. I remember I went to argue. And my stepmom walks away. My dad puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, "You can't win, but there are alternatives to fighting." It quotes Obi-Wan Kenobi, and then took me out at midnight after my sister went to sleep to go see the movie.
Very smart man.
That was a G move. That was pretty cool.
That really is. What a great movie. Okay, yeah. I was going to ask you the exact same question.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Because
would he have done any of it had they not said anything? The answer is no.
One answer we do get is he does become Thane of Cawdor.
He does.
After they tell him, and he doesn't do anything to make that happen.
Well, so
that's just a true prophecy.
So the prophecies that are true Okay, he became Thane of Cawdor. The woods moved.
Right.
The woods moved.
That's your equivocation.
Right.
That's your prophecy that's equivocating.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not totally clear.
There's two of them. There's the one about man not born of woman.
Man not born of woman.
Right.
And the Banquo one.
Right. About Banquo's progeny. Right.
The Banquo's progeny, if you notice, though, it goes Thane of Cawdor, king, Banquo's progeny, man not born of woman,
right.
the forest moving, or whatever.
Okay, another digression.
Then,
real quick before I forget. I suddenly realized that Tolkien must have read Macbeth before he wrote The Two Towers.
Of course.
Because the trees moving, and the thing about man not born of woman,
right.
that where only the Witch King of Onmark can only be killed by a man, and,
right.
and it's like stupid prophecy because it turns out being, I thought there was like a connection
of course,
there.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Tolkien was an English professor, if I remember correctly. So,
Yep.
So if you think about it, the only one that was true out of all of it by itself was the Thane of Cawdor.
He did nothing to bring that about.
The king thing brought all the rest about.
But they were true, right?
They were true because of that. Because of he fulfilled prophecy number 2.
But the forest moving just happened.
Well,
he made the battle happen, but their tactic of hiding in the trees
but
was
none of that would have happened had he not done that.
Right.
So,
but it happened in a way that there is a true prophecy, though. There's definitely they have some source of.
But it was all falling. It was all because of number 2. Number 2 came true because he made it come true, which was becoming king. So I'm going to kill the king, become the king.
So
everything else became true because of that.
Could he have not done that? Was he fated to do it? Was he just going to do it? No matter what happened?
That's a good question. I think that's something that Shakespeare's talking about. Like, maybe Shakespeare's questioning it. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like, do we have control over our lives?
Do we have control over our lives? Exactly. Or is fate like an external force?
Right.
Is weird an external force?
Yeah.
That, I don't know. I don't know where he's. There's definitely true prophecy, though.
Right.
They definitely have some source of knowledge that is other than natural. So because they get things right. Like we said, Macbeth doesn't actually do those things. He doesn't create them because of the prophecy. Becoming king, yes. That's self-fulfilling.
Right.
I don't know the Banquo thing. He murders Banquo, and Banquo's son Fleance survives.
Right.
But that doesn't really cause him to become king one day. That just sort of happened. Could have happened either way.
If he hadn't have killed Banquo, then maybe not. I don't know. I mean,
that one's a little more vague.
Yeah.
But there wouldn't have been a battle at the end.
But I think it's setting things in motion. Right? It's setting everything in motion because he decided to do that. Like he could have said, I'm going to be king. I'm just going to wait. And then maybe Duncan dies of old age and Malcolm doesn't want to be king and then he becomes king. That could have been a possibility. Mm-hmm. And he chose to interpret it because his wife said, this is what we're going to do to make sure that happens.
I suppose this is a theme of tragedy, right?
Yeah.
All the tragedies have this element of, could anybody have gotten off of this roller coaster, once? Or are they just click, 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 click?
Well, that's what makes a tragedy. A tragedy is the fall of a hero.
Right.
Right. And so we see this guy that
I mean, Caesar also gets prophecies, ignores them more like, and goes to his death.
Beware the
Ides of March, right?
Yeah.
So could he have not done that? I don't know. It doesn't seem like. Certainly not within the character. The character was going to do what the character was going to do. So I guess it's a question of fate in that sense.
Right.
That's not something I believe in. Fate. It's like we were talking about this before. Calvinism.
Marcus Aurelius.
Remember? Yeah, we were talking about Calvinism and the idea that you're
see how we circle around.
You're born with a crummy soul and you're destined to go to hell because And I'm like, what a terrible philosophy.
You're not destined to go to hell. You're destined to have a shitty life because that was your station you were born into, whether you like it or not.
But they also believe that you can't strive for salvation. They don't think that
you have to be happy with that station.
See, that makes sense to me as just a way of keeping the peasants in line. I get why somebody would have that philosophy.
Right.
But why would you have this idea?
That's a pessimistic view.
Well, but that's,
I mean, it's convenient.
It's convenient
for those, those in power. But I mean, I think all religion is convenient for those in power if they twist it a certain way.
Of course, of course.
But Calvinism certainly. I mean, Calvinism helps to keep people unmotivated. Keep people in their place because, this is your lot in life.
Right.
God made you a serf, so you stay a serf, right? I don't know. I mean, I think at the time, when Shakespeare was writing this, witchcraft was real, magic was real. Mm-hmm. They were
James the First himself was responsible for the fascination with witchcraft. He actually wrote a book about witchcraft
in the 1590s or
something like that. Yeah, and caused a lot of the obsession with witchcraft, which I guess eventually led to the Salem witch trials, among other things. Which is in the 17th century. I don't know if it's Jacobean, but it's in the 17th century at some point. It must have been later because there was hardly anybody in Massachusetts at the time.
Was it? It was the late 1700s, yeah, or
1620, I think, is when the Mayflower landed. So I think the witch trials are probably 1640, right around the time of the Civil War, I think.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Civil War.
The English Civil War,
English
of course.
Civil War, yeah. Maybe so, yeah.
But there's a connection there with James's obsession with this stuff, and that's why it's in here. This is probably again designed to placate the king.
Yeah.
Look at this. I wrote, look at all these witches in here. You know, they're all bad, and killing kings is bad. And
if you look at Homer,
are we brave enough to do Homer at some point? I really love those.
Iliad.
That's a long read, though.
Homer or Virgil, both of them talk about the fates, and so you have this invisible hand that's controlling and manipulating what's going on. I think that was still, I think widespread, not the Enlightened. The Enlightenment was all about our ability to do whatever we want.
Well, it was also a rejection of this kind of thinking, this sort of spiritual.
Right.
It's not spiritual,
but I think widespread belief
supernatural thinking.
Widespread belief was still ignorant and supernatural, right?
It's a lot of that today.
Yeah. That's certainly true.
That is not, unfortunately, not gone.
I am not at all arguing with that. I don't know what the hell we're going with that, but okay. So are we toasting this classic?
I definitely am.
Yeah.
I think that the plot of Macbeth is not its strongest point. I think that these the asides and the soliloquies and things like that in here are terrific. There's so many lines. Milk of human kindness. I didn't even mention my favorite bit, which is his speech before he dies. The out brief candle like that. I didn't realize was in Macbeth. I thought that was in some other play. All that stuff I think is great. I think it's easily.
That's why we remember Shakespeare.
Yes.
Honestly, versus anybody else.
Not so much the stories.
So much of our little idioms come from
absolutely
come from him.
Yeah. That's why I'm thinking. I think the word weird becoming the word we use it today probably just comes from these characters. That's how powerful Shakespeare's grasp on our language is.
I've known some weird sisters.
I have known some weird sisters. I've known lots of weird sisters.
There we are. Well, let's see. My toast.
Anybody that knows me knows exactly which weird sisters I'm thinking about right now.
You can tell me off air.
Yeah,
I think you still have pictures, right?
There's literally at least one or two people I know who listen to the pod who know exactly who I'm talking about right now. And I love these weird sisters to death, but they're definitely the ones that anybody would be thinking about.
I think the fact that that's it's Macbeth and you're McArthur.
Right. Do you know what Mac means?
Return of the Mac.
Return of the Mac.
Yeah,
yes.
Return of the Mac.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that no?
It means son. Son of.
Means son.
So
son
we're
of,
the sons of Arthur. We're sons of King Arthur.
Sons of King Arthur.
Sons of King Arthur.
I think we're gilding the lily a bit. No?
Gilding the lily.
No.
You mean I'm so glorious that saying that King Arthur is my ancestor just is a waste of gloriousness?
Well, I would say you're at least.
I think what you mean is we're putting a silk hat on a pig, right?
No.
Is that what
I'm trying to be kind.
Oh, okay. All right, then gilding the lily, that works. Sure.
But by saying that, I think you're good enough as it is.
I don't think King Arthur's a real person. I mean, that's something we could probably do. We could probably do Mallory.
Now you're denying your own family. I don't know where to go with you.
I think this is a legendary person. I don't think we're descended from King Arthur.
Well, but all legends come from somewhere.
That's right. Well, I mean, Julius Caesar thought he was descended from Venus.
Right.
Literally walked around telling everybody.
And how do we know that he wasn't? Were you there?
How do I know that he was? Yeah.
Was I there? No, I was not there.
Well, so what's your verdict?
Yeah, I am. I think my only regret on this play is that unlike pretty much everything, all of the other plays are just so little we know about the characters. For a good director, it actually is helpful because it allows the director with what little he or she has to work with, it allows them to really kind of flesh out those characters for us.
Okay.
Like the play that we watched, the one on YouTube.
Would you toast that? Would you toast that version?
Yeah, I absolutely would.
I mean, the cast is incredible.
Yeah. Those are that particular one, and the reason it's on YouTube, that's a lesson in how it should be done. Right, and how dramatic traditional Shakespeare should be done, right?
And it's traditional. It's not one. It's not one of these ones that's doing a lot of crazy scenery stuff
and see, I don't mind those because I like direction, and I always tell my kids. My kids are always enamored with actors and actresses, which everybody is. But I always tell them, look, as far as I'm concerned, the two people with any power in a story are the writer and director. Okay, for a book, it's going to be the writer or the editor if you actually want to get published. But in any case, that aside.
Sometimes a great actor can make something, though.
I'm not saying that. I'm not denying that. Like Ian McKellen's, performance in this, he made that entire thing.
I think he's overdoing it. Honestly, I had a little bit of. There's a couple times he's getting really breathy and spitty and stuff.
Gene Wilder in Willy Wonka,
very good.
made that movie.
No, absolutely,
okay?
Absolutely.
So that
you wouldn't want to watch Fight Club without Brad Pitt.
Right, exactly. That can happen, but the director needs to. But it's the director's vision that the actor is fitting within. And I always say the writer and director because the director is the only other person that has the authority to overrule a writer and say, let's change this line. Let's do this instead. Let's do this instead. Nobody else can do that. And so I have no problem with seeing like a hip hop version of a Shakespeare play.
No,
not at all.
No,
because
cool. That stuff's cool.
Yeah.
It has
because
its
again,
place.
because it's direction, right? It's the interpretation of how they see it, right? You read it, I read it, and it's just words on paper.
Right.
It takes.
I would never. Yeah, I had to watch this.
To bring it
I
out.
could not have just read this in a book.
Right.
That's not a good experience.
Well, you get a different experience of it. So
I did that when I was in high school. I remember I read Hamlet,
Uh-huh.
and I was just like,
this sucks.
this is nothing,
Man,
and then I watched, I think at the time it was the Mel Gibson version, and
Well,
I was just like, okay, now I get what happened.
I think I told you that. So we had this guy, his name was Bruce Street, rest in peace. Dr. Street was, he would teach the comedies and histories.
Okay.
I guess that's what it was. Maybe it was like comedies, histories, and sonnets.
You said something about sonnets before,
yeah. I know that because I was he taught the Henry V, and this guy was he was funny. He was like 6'6", 6'7". He was a big dude. I mean, big. He had a belly that would
Falstaff.
He was Falstaff,
yeah.
man.
Yeah.
And I remember we were sitting in. It was like late in the year, and we're all tired. It's like hot outside and hot in the classroom, and we're trying to we're struggling through Henry V. And he says, somebody read this line or something like that, and somebody read, he just looks at him and he yells and he reads it as Falstaff, and all of us basically got knocked down. You know that scene in Blazing Saddles when she says, we can't hear you, and she yells. Right. Everybody's we kind of did that thing, and he just recites the whole thing, looking right at us, not even reading it. I mean, the dude was Falstaff, and I was like, I appreciate this so much more now that I see it.
It's like poetry. I think people don't appreciate poetry much.
Until it's read.
Poetry is meant to be read aloud.
Yeah,
You're really not supposed to sit and read a poem in a book. You're not going to get much out of that.
Well, you're not going to get the way the poet intended it to be, right?
Right. I read Rime of the Ancient Mariner recently, again, just because something I hadn't read, and I was like, why haven't I read that? So, but what I did is I listened to it online. There was an audible version of it, and I looked at the page while I was reading, and that was really effective. I enjoyed that. I got a lot out of that.
I read some early Beastie Boys, which suck. Some of the worst stuff I've ever.
The girl is crafty like ice is cold.
That is right, yeah. Rhyming and stealing in a drunken state.
I love the Beastie Boys. I actually.
I'll be rocking my rhymes all the way to Hell's Gate.
I read a biography of the Beastie Boys, basically. And so I was listening to some of their older stuff, and I listened to Paul's Boutique, and I was like, that is a terrific album.
Yeah,
and I skipped it. I went right from License to Ill to, I think, Check Your Head.
Yeah, Check Your Head.
And loved both of those, but just never listened to Paul's Boutique. That's a great album. There are some beats. There are some beats in that album that are like them at the top of their game. That is definitely neither here nor there.
All right.
Can we do albums as a classic? Is that something we could do?
I think
it'd be fun to talk about an album.
So. I think we could start implementing sound bites too. There's no reason not to. I mean,
can we get in trouble?
Well, on YouTube we could, but I don't think we can.
Okay.
Let us know if we're wrong. Everybody.
Yeah, anybody that knows, let us know, because I don't want to violate fair use doctrine or something. I mean, if
I think fair
album,
use is examples. We can have examples of things.
Right. I think so.
If we play albums, obviously.
We're not going to just play the album, but if we played a clip of what we're talking about, that might be fun. I might do that. My next free choice, I might go with an album.
I'm gonna start doing sound effects. My son, my 10-year-old.
We're not just gonna do fart sound effects, though, right? If your son's our sound mixer, that's all.
That was his main recommendation. I think he had a couple of sneezes or.
There you go.
Blow your nose.
Like Ferris Bueller.
Yeah, stuff like that. All right. Well, thank you everyone for bearing with us.
We are unanimously toasting this classic.
Yeah, let's toast it.
Cheers to MacBeth.
We'll see you next time on. We'll talk at you next time on Toasting the Classics.
Right. Toasting the Classics. Out.
That's it for episode 6 of Toasting the Classics. Out, brief podcast. For those playing along at home, get the ingredients to make a Manhattan for next week's episode, where we'll be talking about the 1951 J.D. Salinger novel Catcher in the Rye. If you'd like to get in touch, send us an email at toastingtheclassics@gmail.com. Send us show ideas, your comments, hot takes and complaints, whatever. Check out my blog at theattractivenuisance.com and follow us on Twitter at @ractivenuisance. Our music was written by Michelle McArthur. See you next time on Toasting the Classics.